We all dream of that perfect role, our dream job. But what happens when the job you've worked your butt off for ends up with a termination? My guest today, Dr. William Lewis, knows that pain firsthand. In his new book, Perched in the Storm, he shares how losing his dream job became the catalyst for becoming a successful entrepreneur and mentor to many leaders and people all across the world. In this episode, we'll unpack his story, challenge the idea of a dream job, and give you 7 behaviors you need to navigate your career through tough storms. Now, let's get into it. Hey, and welcome back to the Transparent Nature Podcast, where we bring real conversations to help you navigate your career and workplace challenges. It's your host, Prince Tate, and I want to personally thank you for listening in and supporting this podcast. If you are a returning guest, or even if this is your first time tuning in, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Share this episode with a friend who can benefit from this topic today, and leave us a review. Your support continues to help us to bring real, great insights to help you succeed in your career and within your workplace. Today we have Dr. Lewis. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
My goodness, you know what? Your energy is so magnanimous that I am good today. I'm trying to get off of your energy. I'm trying to feel that vibe that you brought in. So I am feeling great today. Thank you for having me on the
Absolutely.
podcast today.
Man, I love that word. You said magnanimous.
Yes,
Say it
yes,
again.
big and magnanimous, just big and huge.
Magnanimous. I love that.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna put that in my dictionary vocabulary words. And
Absolutely.
I'm just going to start using that this whole week.
That is how you own a word. My English
Yeah.
teacher, back in I think my 12th grade English teacher told us whenever we read something and there's a word that we don't know, for us to define it, then for us to use it on our friends and our families, and then we own that word. And so use it and own it.
Man, I love it. Hey, so look, we're super excited to have you with us today. But before we dive into today's topic and getting into your book and talking about the 7 behaviors of resilient leaders, tell us one of your top workplace pet peeves that always irks your nerves.
Oh my goodness. I don't necessarily like workplace gossip. I want to come to work. I want to get the work done. I believe in sharing stories and engaging with each other, but I don't like to gossip about other folks. And so when my colleagues or when colleagues began to do that, I kind of step away. That's something that I just don't want to get into.
I always tell people that end up in the HR office, hey, workplace gossip, we know it happens all the time, but you have to be cognizant of what you talk about and what you share. Because at the
Absolutely.
point of it escalating to HR, now everybody's in trouble. Now it's a problem. Yes,
Yep.
it is a problem,
Yep.
right? And so
Absolutely.
you have to be careful. And you know what? That's another episode for another day. Workplace gossip. So, hey, let's get into your story, man. And even talk about this book that you've written and really talk about the why. Dr. Lewis, you've written Perched in the Storm out of some deep personal experiences. Can you take us back to that moment where it all began, where you got let go or what we call fired from what you thought was one of your dream jobs?
Yeah, I absolutely. I'm just so excited to bring Perched in the Storm, brutal lessons in resiliency every leader can learn from entrepreneurs to the market. It will be out later on in the wintertime. I'm excited about this project. You know, Getting fired is not something that's unique. I believe that many of us have been fired before. As a matter of fact, I remember my first time that I got fired was when I was 14.
Oh wow.
I worked at Burger King,
Oh my
and they
goodness.
found out that I was too young to be employed. I lied on my application, and they found out
Mhm.
about a week later,
Oh
and I
wow.
was fired from my job.
Ah,
But the stakes weren't that high
okay.
at 14 working at Burger King.
Man, I'm gonna tell you
Well,
this. That was my first employer.
is that right?
Working at Burger King. I worked at Burger King in high school, and no, I was not 14. I was actually legal age. I think it
Yeah,
was 16 when I
16. Yeah,
first got into there, into Burger King. But man, I tell you what, I've got some long history with Burger King, and what made it really interesting was that I didn't just work at Burger King. I had another brother that worked at the same location and another one, so it was
mm,
3 of us
wow,
working at the same time, and so, it's a lot of great memories, a lot of
yeah,
great memories, but
yeah.
anyways, so yeah, so you worked there and
So I worked there, but that's not the moral of the story. The moral of the story is that I worked at my dream job, which interesting enough, which I thought was my dream job.
Mhm,
I was the vice president for diversity and inclusion at Virginia Tech back in 2010 to 2014, and I was loving it. My entire career
mhm,
was in higher education. I loved Blacksburg, loved the
yeah,
college, loved the students. I loved the work that I was doing. um, but we had a new president that came in, and his direction for diversity, equity, and inclusion was not my was well, I was not part of his direction, if you
yeah,
will. Yeah. And so I was fired from my job. And from
mm,
a professional standpoint, from an adult standpoint, that was the first time ever I've ever been fired from a job. I always said to myself, and this was somewhat, um, one may say arrogant, but I always said that whenever I get into a job, it's going to be gold because I'm gonna make it gold. And so
yeah, I
that was
love
the
that.
attitude I brought to that particular job, and I enjoyed it. I was in the high six figures, loving life, living life, just doing it right in my
Mhm,
early 40s, just about to set the world on fire. And I had this career interruption.
mm,
And you know what? The interesting thing is that it wasn't the firing. You know, I was going to be okay. I knew
yeah,
that I was going to be okay. I had the credentials. I had the PhD. I had
mhm,
the experience. I had the title. So I had all the things that would make someone okay after a firing. My challenge was getting hired after the firing,
mm,
because the firing I didn't get fired for embezzlement. I
right,
didn't get fired for sexual misconduct. I didn't get fired for incompetency. I got fired for political reasons. And
mm,
so it's always, so whenever you get fired for political reasons, people always want to say, "Well, William, what happened?
yeah.
You had to do something." I didn't do anything. I did my
Mhm,
job, right? But there were political reasons behind
yeah,
the firing. Um, and so every other employer that I interviewed for, and Prince, let me tell you, I went from all over the United States. I went as far as California to New
mhm,
York to Florida to Michigan and every
wow,
place in between, looking for a job for nearly 2 years. I
oh,
was on
wow,
the job market for 2 years looking for a job for that next level and couldn't get it. That's where I really had to step into resiliency. As a matter of fact, that's where depression really seeped in.
mm,
That's where where I was at my lowest point in my life, was during those 2 years searching for another job and couldn't get it. I began to feel like an imposter. I asked
mm,
myself, well, Will, were you good enough to even get the first job? And I had two
wow,
higher level positions prior to this one. So it wasn't like this was the first job that I had in senior leadership. I worked in two other positions before getting that position. But not being
wow,
able to get into another position as quickly as I thought I would did something to me. It really impacted me emotionally. It impacted me spiritually. It impacted me financially. So this book, Perched in the Storm, it reminded me as I was going through that and other circumstances. It reminded me of a bird um, that is on this limb in the middle of a storm, kind of a tsunami type of storm, if you
Yeah.
will. And this bird is just perched there, steady, unmoved, not unbothered. When you look at the bird, you see the feathers kind of ruffled, if you will, but the bird is there. It's wet. The wind is trying to knock it off of the branch, but the bird is there perched. This book speaks about being perched in the storm. And what I had to learn through that firing and through not getting hired for nearly 2 years is that I was going through a storm and I had to be perched. I had to be steady. And it just didn't, I had to learn it over time because let me tell you something. As I was going through it, my goodness,
Hmm.
that wind was knocking me down. I was going from place to place. I was being uh, sprayed all over the place related to that wind and the trauma of the storm. But coming out
Yeah.
of it, it made me stronger, and I wanted to share that lesson with others because this is what I
Hmm.
realized: no matter who you are, no matter your age, your race, your wealth, your position, your title, we all go through storms. We're either in a
That's true.
storm, we're either coming out of a storm, or we're going into a storm. So perched in the storm is for every leader, and a leader doesn't. It's not about a title. We're not talking about somebody that has the title of vice president or division leader or
Yeah.
division manager. We're talking about leading yourself, leading your family, having influence over others. Everybody who's listening to this podcast, they have influence over someone,
Absolutely.
themselves and others. And so, leader, that definition of leader, this book is for everyone because in
Right.
my mind, everyone's a leader.
Yeah, and let's take it back a little bit. You talked about your dream job and what you thought was your dream job. And I think for a lot of people, especially young professionals or individuals that's segueing into like an actual career, a lot of times they say, well, this is my dream job. I want to work, at the White House. I want to work for this Fortune 500 company. I want to be at the corporate office. I want to do this job. I want to do that. And then you get into the role and you quickly learn that
Mm.
what you thought was a dream, like
Mm-hmm.
now it becomes something of reality that's totally different than from what you dreamt about,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of talk a little bit about this misconception that there is this thing such thing as a dream job, because my notion is there's no such thing as a dream job. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that I think that I don't disagree with you in terms of the challenges of getting the job and aligning that job with the realities. I think people can have a sense of a dream job, but sometimes a dream can turn into a nightmare very quickly. And so
Mm,
what you have to do is you have to begin to just realize the realities of what you're in and that nothing's perfect. So
yeah.
to your point, first of all, I would invite people to think about alignment. So there are three different entry points into the job: the job description, the interview, and the actual job. And so what you have to do is you have to align every time you go through that phase. Each phase you have to make an alignment adjustment. So the job description is going to be totally different than the interview. So what you experience in the job description and what you experience in the interview is different. And so you have to begin to make adjustments and align that
Hmm.
description and the interview, because once people sit down with you in the interview, it's hardly ever as cut and dry in the interview as it says on the job description, right? And so that's the first thing we have to do. Then as we get into the interview, and if we have a job offer, and if we're on the ground, the realities on the ground are different than the realities in the interview. People are bringing their best selves into the interview. Once you
That's
get
true.
into that job, just on the job, it's a whole nother experience, and the expectations, it shifts a little bit. And so I would say that as you go through what you believe is your dream job, but this is for any job, as you go through that job process, that job search process, always make those tweaks and those alignments, and begin to make expectation adjustments. Once you get the job, have an alignment meeting with your supervisor. Okay, I got the job. I'm here.
Hmm.
Now let's talk about what you want to accomplish in the first year. What is your vision in the first year? What is your
Right.
vision for me in the first year? Therefore, you can not be misled by the interview, and you can hear fully from the person that you'll be responsible to hear from them what their expectations are. And then that helps to manage your expectations of this dream job, because what usually happens is that you have to the dream unfolds while you're working it. you
Oh,
know
wow.
Really what we're looking at is the dream title, right? And so we have this, oh, I want to work for this place, I want this title. That's not necessarily the dream job, because you don't know the job until you work the job.
Mm.
And in working the job, you begin to create for yourself what that dream is inside of the job. So that would be those are my thoughts as it relates to dream jobs. For me, working and my career has been in higher education, and so working at Virginia Tech, it was really the title. I wanted to be a vice president for diversity. I
Hmm.
wanted to hit the highest level of my career in my industry. I want to do it in a college environment. And so as I got the position, as I began to try to align with the president that hired me, then I began to engage within aspects of the culture, aspects of my colleagues, aspects of the college life, so that I can make it my dream. I can make it my reality. And
Hmm.
then when things went sour, that dream turned into a nightmare. And so we have to look at it from that perspective, and nothing lasts, right? Nothing lasts.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you said. You said as you get into the job, you make it your dream, right?
Yeah.
You make it your dream job. And I like that because you go into the job knowing that you may have to make some sacrifices. It may not be all that you want, but you're going level setting with yourself and then going into the role to and meeting with your leaders, meeting with whoever else you need to meet with in the beginning stages to really define what that role is and really so you can start think about how you can make this job that dream job, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I
Absolutely.
like how you put that, right? You make it what it is.
Yeah.
It could be a horror story, or it can be a great story in the making. So Perch in the Storm, and this is the book that's coming out, and I'm super excited to read this book, as it really talks about resiliency, right, and getting through the storm. Whenever you have life situations, there are some people who stay in the storm, but again, to what you said, you have to make it what it is, right? And so that kind of leads me to think, when I first started working at my first employer, in HR, I was like, man, my dream was just to get in HR,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so working at this company, and similar story to yours, a new HR leader came in and had a different thought process, or a different idea of where they wanted me. And so my life became reality so quickly because they wanted me to do this role, But I'm like, no, I don't want to do that role. I want to do this role. And I didn't get fired though.
Good for
but
you.
but in my mind, in my heart, like I was committed to be there, but I knew when reality set in and I said, you know what? I gotta find me another job. And it was a tough moment because you don't really plan for these things,
Mhm, mhm,
right? Regardless if you quit or whether if you get fired, most of the times people don't really plan. Okay, you know, I'm gonna leave in a year and a half or a year two, right? For a lot of people, it's like, hey, I'm gonna work this job. And one of the things that the older generation had taught us is you get a job and you keep a job.
mhm. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And so it's us a lot of emotions attached to losing a job or being forced out of a position, right, that you're working in. Um, and you're being forced, right, to move to a different chapter in your life.
Mhm.
And as hard as it could be, you then go back once you've gone through the storm and you've realized, you know what? This was for my good, right? This was for my good. And I would tell myself, and I often tell myself, and I often go back to that story, right? And I tell myself, you know what? I'm so glad that this person came into my life really to push me and to make me uncomfortable so that I can create something different, so I can explore something different. So let's get into the 7 behaviors of resilient leaders. Man, you've got some really good points here. So let's dive into it. Hey, I'll let you take the
Yeah,
lead on this. Let's go through it and talk about the seven behaviors of resilient leaders.
absolutely. And I want to, before we get into that, I want to go back to that. This is for my good. And let me tell you something, that my being fired and my not
Mhm.
getting a job for 2 years was for my good. I did
Yeah,
not know it. I did not realize it. I would not be talking to you right now about this very subject if that didn't happen, right? I
absolutely.
wouldn't have written my first book, Sweet Potato Pumpkin Pie Conversations with My White Friends About Race, had that not happened.
Mm,
And I wouldn't be on my second book, Perched in the Storm, if that wouldn't happen. I wouldn't have been able to take my entire family on a European vacation, once in a lifetime vacation, had that not happened. I wouldn't have
yeah,
met great people all over the country, great people like you at the Memphis Sherm conference,
yeah,
if that hadn't happened. And so sometimes we have to look at these storms, not sometimes, all the time. We have to look at storms and look at the opportunity that they present for us. Now, when we talk about the 7 behaviors of a resilient leader, one of the 7 behaviors is mindset mastery. And so when we think about, if I would have stayed in a mindset of a pity, oh my goodness, I got fired. Oh my goodness, that happened to me. Oh,
yeah.
I can't get another job. Oh my goodness, I can't pay my bills. And let me tell you, I couldn't pay my bills. But if I would have
Mm,
just stayed in that pity place, I wouldn't have been able to get to a higher platform. And
right,
so mindset mastery says, how do I take the storm and turn it into opportunity?
right,
How do I grow through the challenge? How do I make, as they say, a lemonade out of lemons, right? And so I believe mindset mastery, if we're going to overcome any storm, any adversity in our lives, we have to
yeah,
have a positive mindset about it, right? And so that's one of the behaviors. The
yeah,
7 behaviors of resilient leaders, this is not, these are not character traits. These are not
mhm,
leadership traits. These are behaviors
yeah.
that we develop through the
Things
storm.
that things that you can control,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. So, one thing I would like for the audience just to think about when we think about mindset mastery is this concept right here. It's not I can't do it.
Yeah,
It's how can I do it? When we begin to say how can I, that opens up our imagination. And so
wow.
mindset mastery is very pivotal and important as it relates to being a resilient leader, because resiliency is about bouncing back. And if
Yeah.
I don't have a can do attitude, if I don't have an attitude that I am going to make it, I won't bounce back.
Man, I
Uh,
love that. I love that, the first one, the first behavior is mindset mastery because it's really all in your mind, right? How you
Absolutely.
view things. And it's sometimes, I'm not going to say it's not okay to have a freak show or to kind of go crazy because it's like, oh my God, this thing
Yeah,
happened to me.
yeah,
I think we're all human.
yeah,
Go through feel the feels, go through the emotions, but eventually you have to sit down with yourself and say, you know what? How can I, like you said, how can I take this storm and make it something that's going to help me to move on, right?
yeah,
How can I learn from this so that I can grow and continue to pursue my dreams and aspirations? Man, so I love it, right? It
yeah,
starts with the mind. And you talked about imagination. Just imagine, right? You're sitting in a room by yourself, or you're sitting in your car heading to work, and you're imagining the opportunities that are out there. You know what? It's endless because you're
yeah,
creating those through your imagination. You're creating it in your mind, and so what happens is when you are actually physically looking for it, you will attract it, right?
absolutely,
So I'm
absolutely.
just gonna share that little piece.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. We manifest it in our minds first.
Yeah,
It achieved and manifest in our minds, and it manifests in
yeah.
reality. Well, absolutely.
You
Then
gotta see it before you see it, man.
you gotta see it before you see it. I used to watch all the back in the '70s and '80s. I used to watch all the kung fu shows, if you will, and I remember this one kung fu master said, "You see it before you do it, then you do it." And you
Mm,
see it in your mind before you do it. And so he went through the entire uh, uh, combat in his head. He saw it, then before he did it, then he actually did it. And that's the whole thing about mindset mastery, right? We got to see it before we do it. Then and all of this, the seven behaviors, they build off of each other, because the next one
yeah.
after mindset mastery is adaptability, right? We got to know how to pivot. We got to know how to adapt. I was in the Marines,
Yes.
and being in the Marines, one of the things that our motto is adapt, improvise, and overcome. So what that means, whatever the circumstances are, and they probably are not in your favor, you have to adapt, you have to improvise, and you have to overcome. The mission critical is for you to overcome, so you can achieve your mission, right? And so when we think about a behavior of a resilient leader, it is that notion of adaptability, being
Yeah.
able to turn on a pivot, turn on a dime, being able to just to. I had a $20,000 investment in developing for HR, actually developing
Mhm.
my own um, employee engagement tool.
Yeah.
I invested $20,000 in the tool, launched it, and there were all types of issues and bugs inside of this tool. One of my clients called me. I'm at a conference. Client calls me and is like, "Will, I'm disappointed in this. This is not working for us." And this is a six-figure client. I invested $20,000 in getting the tool made. I've got a six-figure client that has engaged in the tool. The tool is not working.
Mm.
I had to pivot.
Oh
I
yeah.
had to take that tool down and go to an external vendor and use their tool instead. That's a $20,000 investment out of my hard earned money, right? And so, I mean, I'm like, and I'm not, I'm broke. I don't have any money. And but I had to adapt, improvise, and overcome, because the tool that I fixed, that I was working on, wasn't working. So
Yeah.
instead of being bullheaded and staying with that tool and saying, "Well, I invested all this money in this tool, I'm gonna make it work," No, I had to adapt. And guess what?
Right.
When we talk about adaptability, the next behavior of resilient leader is emotional intelligence. See, if I was not aware, if I was
Mhm.
not aware of my surroundings, if I didn't read the room, if I was not mature enough, if I didn't have
Yeah.
the emotional intelligence, I would have stayed with that tool
Yeah.
because I would have been like, I invested so much money in this tool. No, I'm gonna make it work. No, no.
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence says that I have to be able to understand what's going on around me and make the appropriate changes and
Yeah.
make the appropriate adjustments as I engage within the environment. Emotional intelligence says that when I approach my colleagues and I approach team members, I'm aware of my own biases, my own barriers, and
Right. Right.
I have some cognition, of who they are, and and therefore that allows me to engage with them in a very um, emotional way, intelligent way, and also strategic way as well.
Man, that's amazing. And when as you talk about emotional intelligence and your story with your customer, your client, that then leads to one of your other points that you have in here is service oriented because you weren't selfish, right? It wasn't just about you and your product. You had to think about what can I do to serve this person, right? So let's talk about service oriented.
Absolutely, and you hit it. You hit it right there. My mother gave me when I was in my teens. She gave me this example. Um, she said, son, take your fist and ball your fist up. And I said, okay, mom, I'll do this.
Mhm.
And then she said, now imagine inside of your fist you have $1 in wrapped in that fist. She said, now, here's the reality, son. She said, you will not get any other money inside of your hand because it's clenched around that dollar. Now, she said, if you were to open your hand up like this, she said, what will happen is that you can give that dollar and then dollars can come to you. And what she was
Wow.
saying was is that being a service to other people, we will get stuff to us, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
so we cannot be selfish and not be of service. And so oriented is really about being, how do I help somebody else? How do I
Mhm.
keep other people in mind and in my heart? And so when I have a heart of service, that means that yes, I'm not just thinking about myself. I'm thinking about the client too. And I'm
Right.
and I'm not just thinking about trying to keep that client, but I want that client to be successful. And my tool was set up to be successful, for her to be successful. It did not provide her the success that she was looking for. Therefore, I had to go and find another tool so that she could be successful. Oriented is not about me. It's
Yeah.
about the other.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once we look at that service oriented, we look at that emotional intelligence. Then another place where we have to begin to look at is how do we think about continuous learning and education, right? All the storms that I've been through, I've learned from them, and we
Mhm.
all should learn from our
That's
storm.
true.
And so I think that, and we hear a lot about people need to be, we need to go to college and get this continuous learning and education and innovation. That is true, but we
Yeah.
also have to do that within the context of the storms that we've been through as well. Because here's the reality: the life is our best teacher. Life is our classroom. The storm is our classroom. It's not the classroom inside of college or technical
Yeah.
school or any
Inside of a
workshop
building.
inside of a building. The classroom are the storms that we go through. And so we have to begin to think about, how do we learn? What do we learn? What's the lesson? When
Yeah.
I was going through all those job interviews, I had to stop and say, God, what is the lesson? What are you trying to what you trying to say here?
Yeah. What you
Right?
trying to tell
And
me? What you trying to
what you
show
trying to
me?
tell me? Absolutely. And so I think that we have to look at it from that vantage point, as we look at our own storms and our own lives. Then it's interesting because when we think about what the lesson is, then that can move us into strategic career growth. Now, I don't
Yeah.
want to stay here just for a moment when we think about strategic career growth, because this is for anyone that is looking to advance their career. Um, and we hear a lot. We have mentors. We have people talking about, oh, you need to grow your career. Absolutely. But I really believe when we think about strategic career growth, what that means to me is, for example, Prince, this podcast is
Yeah.
part of your strategic career growth, because what this gives you a platform to
Yeah.
be to stand out amongst your peers, to be a thought leader, to have other people to come on and to share thought
Mhm.
leadership, and it gives you that platform. So when people, as a brand, as Prince Tate, as the brand, as a transparent HR podcast, you want that to be a brand that stands out. Strategic
Right.
career growth says, how do we create opportunities for ourselves to where we build our brand separate from the company brand. The company's
Right. Right.
we're going to have that brand with the company, but we also have to develop our own brand so that as we go out, as we grow with inside the company, or as we get growth opportunities outside the company, we have a strong brand that people want, that value. Here's the reality. When you bring value, you don't have to chase money.
I
Money
love that.
comes to you when you bring value, and that's something I had to learn.
I
I
really
used to
love
try to
that.
chase money. Oh, I want this job because it's gonna pay this much. Oh, no, I said, you know what? I have value, and the moment that I began to recognize my own value and begin to build up that value and let people know about that value, then things started coming my way. Now, am I wildly rich? No, I'm not. One day I will be, but not today. But I can tell you this: I have gotten a lot of contracts, a lot of engagements based on the
Mhm.
value that I brought.
Yeah.
And so strategic career growth is something that we most certainly need to continue to look at. And then we need to look at work life integration. I
Yeah,
believe.
let's talk about that, right? Work life integration. And I kind of like how you put integration. A lot of times we see work life balance, and I actually have an episode on work life balance.
Yep, yep.
But I love the integration piece because it talks more about really infusing all that you do. And I'm gonna be honest. I sometimes I'm challenged with really integrating everything in my life because it's like I put everything into a
Hmm.
box.
Hmm. Hmm.
Everything has its own time, right?
Yep.
So let's dive into this work life integration
Yeah.
piece.
Absolutely. And I had to come to learn work life integration, and it actually came from my engaging in entrepreneurship. Before being an entrepreneur, for me, I put everything, compartmentalize everything like you. Okay, I'm gonna go to work for these 8 hours. I'm gonna come home. I'm gonna spend time with the family. At the time, I'm gonna work on my PhD. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that, and everything had its own compartment. So I was trying to make balance. So I was trying to balance family
Mhm.
time with work time, with school time, with going to the movies, with spiritual time, and for me, that balance became trying to make that balance became overwhelming.
Yeah.
And what was more manageable is when I realized that I cannot separate myself from work. I cannot
Mm,
separate
that's good.
myself from life. I cannot separate myself from my religion. I can't. So what I have to do is I have to make sure that I'm just integrating them together, and that 24 hours in a day, whatever happens in that 24 hours in a day, that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That is the integration of work life. And so it's not, oh, I didn't get this done. Nope. If I didn't get it done, I didn't get it done. I'm gonna work on it tomorrow, because it's all integrated into my life. So now my wife and we're both entrepreneurs, and this may just be a function of who we are as entrepreneurs. But my wife and I, on Friday nights, interesting story, and I'm gonna share a little bit about my age a little bit. On Friday nights, we would I remember I love to go to jazz concerts or what have you. So we had paid some dollars to go to this jazz concert. I think it started at 7, and so we're getting ready to go out, and I have this look on my face, and she has this look on her face, and we both look at each other and be like, I don't feel like going anywhere. And we're like, we didn't spend this money on these tickets. We're like, we're all dressed up, ready to go. And we change into our pajamas or what have you. And we go get our laptop, fix a charcuterie board, and put on Netflix, and we begin to work. For us,
Mm.
that's work life integration. We're still spending time with each other. We're in the
Yeah,
same room,
yeah,
but we're working. Entrepreneur, she's working on her project. I'm working on my project, and we got Netflix. And so it puts the twist on the Netflix and popcorn, and on a date night. So we got the charcuterie board, a little wine, some wine
yeah,
and cheese, and we're laughing with each other, watching old movies that can turn into white noise, so we can kind of tune it out. And we're talking about business, and we're working. That's work life integration.
yeah. So how does that work? Work life integration, right? You're going through a storm, or I like to say a career storm, and just like you, right? You're trying to look for a job. You know you're unemployed for almost 2 years, and you're trying to make this thing work, right? And
Hmm.
it kind of leads me back because a lot of people, would say, especially you're a man, right? And if a man not having a job is like the most embarrassing thing you can ever experience as a man, right? Because it's like I'm
Hmm.
supposed to be the provider. I'm supposed to be the one, right? If not anyone, if
Hmm.
not anything else, that's my responsibility. So how do you really talk about work life integration as you're going through a storm in your
Yeah.
career?
Yeah. I mean, you hit on something right there. That's one of the things that really tore me apart, was not being able to provide for my family at the level and the expectation that I had for myself to
Hmm.
provide, not somebody else, but my
Right.
own high standards of providership was took a hit.
Hmm.
And it took a hit again to where um, I spiraled down into depression. I was depressed. I was in a fetal position. Oftentimes, often mornings, I wake up just crying because I
Mm.
couldn't get the job. I was just depressed. But you know what? Even though I couldn't get the job, at the same time, I was working on my own business.
Wow.
At the same time, I mean, I remember working with a colleague, and and this is during the time, those 2 years I was looking for a job, trying to do my own business. We hosted seminars for diversity officers across the country, and this was back in 2018, 2019. And I remember being at a seminar where we're that service oriented, we're giving service, we're feeding into other people, we're telling them they can do the job, and we're trying to make sure that we're rah rah, and we're being the cheerleaders in their lives and in their professions. At the same time, my car had gotten repoed. My
Mm.
wife had called me and said your car had just gotten repossessed.
Wow.
My heart was hurt. I was I was uh, fractured, but I wasn't broken
Mm.
inside. I was hurt, but you know what? I kept going. So how do you have that work life integration when you're going through the storm? You got to move through the storm, because on the other side of the storm is sunshine. The reality is that you cannot walk around it. You can't
Yeah.
go over it. You have to go through it. And so
Wow.
what I had to do is I had to go through the storm.
Yeah.
There were lessons in the storm, that the storm made me stronger. And so as I'm dealing with providership, as I don't have enough money to pay my bills, as I'm at this conference on something that I developed, me and this colleague developed
Yeah.
together, our imagination, and my car gets repoed. I'm in the storm. I'm walking
Yeah.
through the storm. And guess what, Prince? I'm here talking to you on the other side of the storm. And that was not the only storm that I had, but I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
stronger for it.
Yeah. And that's just one of those pivotal moments, right? in your career where it's led you to where you are today, right?
Absolutely.
So we talked about the 7 behaviors of resilience leaders. Number one being mindset mastery. It's all about your mindset and how you view it in your mind. Being adaptable. Number two, and really how you pivot. Being service oriented and really having others in mind, and then we talk about emotional intelligence, right? How do you control your emotions and really to be able to respond in a way where you're not overly emotional about the storm that you're going through, right? We talked about strategic career growth, right? Really um, how you plan to grow in your career, but outside of your organization, right? And really, it's all about continuous learning. That's one of the ones as well. Number six. And then number seven, work life integration. Man, out of all of these, if there's one behavior or mindset shift you want every listener to walk away with today, which one would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. I got to start with mindset. Mindset
Mm,
is that's the key. If your mindset is not, if you don't have the right mindset, none of the others will work because
wow.
you won't be able to adapt. You won't get
Wow.
into the continuous learning. You won't be able to think about emotional intelligence. You can't do anything if you don't have the right mindset.
Wow. Man, I love that. And I agree. Again, earlier in the episode, I said, man, that number one, that's it. It's the foundation of everything. Dr. Lewis, thank you so much for joining us today and
Yes.
sharing such invaluable insights. Man, tell us, how can people find you and learn more about your work?
Oh my goodness, if they go to drwilliamtlewis.com, they will be able to find me there. If they send me an email, william@wtlewis.com, send me an email and let's connect. I would love to talk to you about the book, talk to you about your own career growth, your own journey, share with you how I have engaged in my career journey. So just connect in with me on LinkedIn
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and Facebook. Absolutely. Dr. William T. Lewis.
If you've enjoyed this episode today, be sure to subscribe to the Transparent Nature podcast and also follow my good friend, Dr. Lewis. Your career storms don't have to define you, they can refine you. Dr. Lewis's story proves that losing a so called dream job can actually open the door to something far greater. Grab his book, Perched in the Storm, when it comes out, for even more on the 7 behaviors we talked about today. And remember, you don't have to wait for a title to start leading. You can lead right where you are. Lead yourself, right? It starts there. Share this episode with someone who's facing their own career storm, and let's all keep growing through what we go through. Again, it's your host, Prince Tate. Thank you so much for listening today. And until next time, keep navigating your career with clarity and with confidence.